Hello, and welcome back to How to Beat the Pantheon of Hallownest. In this episode, episode 2, I'm going to be going through the next 3 segments, from Marmu all the way through to Hornet Sentinel. Anyway, let's get into it. This boss is extremely irritating. I've never been able to find a way to do this consistently without taking a lot of damage. This is one of the worst bosses to do on Radiant, purely because of how chaotic the ricochet physics are in this game. The only tips I can really give are to jump before the fight starts. You can get in 1 hit and 2 shrieks before Marmu starts bouncing around like a lunatic. Every time she teleports, I also recommend using Descending Dark, because it will knock her back most of the time and give you some more time to react. Flukemarm is another very simple boss, despite the fact that she is clearly just like the most attractive boss in the game. It's not very hard. She only has 1 attack and she doesn't move, so naturally she's quite easy. The 3 main strategies that I like to use is 1, you can stand on the bottom left platform and just jump and hit her, and then once you have full soul you can stand underneath her and just shriek 3 times and kill her. You can sit on top of her and just pogo her until you have full soul, then get underneath her and use triple shriek until she's dead. Or you can use the strategy that speedrunners use, which I have attempted but I cannot get consistent at, where you stand to the side of her and you spam attack and use a combination of pogos and double jump to stay in the air until she dies. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to the fight. If you've already gotten up to Broken Vessel in the Pantheon of Hallownest, then I don't think you really need tips on him, but I'll give some advice anyway. Whenever he dives down from the ceiling, you want to make sure that you're standing right next to him, but not underneath him. This will ensure that you never get hit by the little infection blobs. When you start slamming his head into the ground, you can just stand next to him and try to dodge the infection balloons while attacking him with your nail. But I find it much more consistent to use Descending Dark alternating with nail hits. You still get in a lot of damage, but it's a much less risky option. The best way to do this fight, in my opinion, is to just run at Broken Vessel and spam him as much as possible. If you hit him fast enough, he staggers every 7 hits. So if you can keep a rhythm of just staggering him and then healing up the damage you took, then you'll be able to kill him pretty quickly without losing any health. Galien is another extremely simple fight. There really isn't a lot to talk about here, just spam him with your nail and use a Bistreak when he's above you. The only thing I can really say is that you can trick the big scythe's movement. If you start walking in one direction, wait till the scythe is clearly going to hit there, and then turn around and start walking back in the other direction. Paintmaster Sheo is a very fun fight, but he is also pretty easy and doesn't have much health. When he's about to do his blue paint attack, dash away from him to avoid it, then try to either jump through the gaps or dash back towards him for more damage. When he does his yellow paint attack, make sure to jump, then either dash over and hit him, or use Shade Soul from range. When he jumps above to use his red attack, dash in and hit him. What? I skipped a line. When he jumps above to use his red attack, just dash to the side and try not to get hit. This attack comes down to practice and learning where the safe spots are. When he does his great slash, which is the purple attack, dash away from him to avoid the initial slash, then dash back in and hit him. Using Descending Dark here can help avoid the paint blobs that fall from the ceiling. When he jumps over you, don't dash underneath him. It may look like he'll land on you, but most of the time he'll jump just past you. Try not to attack him after he jumps, because if he uses the blue paint attack, he'll usually hit you before you can react. After Paintmaster Sheo, there's a bench. Make sure to stop up on health and soul, but don't change your charms just yet. Hive Knight is a pretty fun boss, and one that you'll want to try and kill as quickly as possible, because some of his attacks that occur later on in the fight are very irritating. Whenever he slashes from far away, you can either dash through him and keep the pressure on with DPS, or you can jump over him and pogo. I personally recommend dashing through him and using a Shade Soul backwards for a little more damage, but it really doesn't matter how you do this attack. Every time he appears behind you, you can simply jump over and pogo before he goes under you. When he summons the honey spikes, I recommend using Descending Dark after the first spike gets shot. That allows you to dodge it pretty much 100% of the time and gives you a little extra DPS. When he summons the bees down from the ceiling, they don't actually die from nail hits, but they will get destroyed instantly by any spell. So if you use Descending Dark, you can get rid of them pretty easily, or you can just dodge them and keep on the pressure for DPS. This is another pretty brain-dead boss. You shouldn't really need to think too much to defeat this guy. Whenever he teleports off screen, you can just Shade Cloak out of the way, and then you can get in as many heals as you like, though you really should not be healing for this fight. Like, you should not be taking damage. After he teleports off screen and then reappears, you can climb up onto the wall and then use a Shade Soul where he reappears, and it will usually hit twice. Whenever he's slamming down his pancakes, you can time a shade dash so that you use iframes as they slam down onto the ground and you won't get hit. My number one tip for this fight is just turn off your sound so you don't have to listen to this. Jokes aside, there are a few tips I can give for this guy. Make sure that you're standing right next to him when he's jumping over you, because then most of the time he'll just completely miss you and you can keep spamming. Every time he jumps above you, try to get in a shriek if you have the soul, because it'll do a lot of damage. Whenever there's an annoying enemy, like a primal aspid, on the other side of the screen and you can't reach it easily, Shade Soul's probably the best way to hit it, but make sure to wait till the collector drops down from the ceiling before you use it, just so that you get that extra bit of damage. Cyclone Slash is also really good for this fight because it lets you get rid of most of the enemies and deal tons of damage to the collector, but it's probably not the best way to do it unless you're playing on nail binding. God Tamer is quite a counterintuitive fight. You would think from just looking at it that the fight would end when either both were dead or when the actual Tamer was dead, but for whatever reason the fight keeps going until the beast dies, so you want to make sure to focus that. Right at the start of the fight you can charge up a Cyclone Slash and hit the beast and the Tamer for 6 hits, which gives you a ton of soul and a bunch of damage. Whenever the beast charges up a spit attack, make sure to jump over it or use Descending Dark, then pogo the beast and use Descending Dark again if possible. Whenever it starts rolling up into a ball, you can just jump over it, but once it hits its peak of its jump, it will always target your last known location, so you can just dash out of the way and start hitting it. At the start of the Troupemaster Grimm fight, you can Dream Nail him once or twice if you have good timing for soul. After this, you can get in a free hit before he teleports without triggering his pufferfish. His fire bats are very easy to deal with, just jump over them and dash towards him to get in a few hits. When he appears in front of you to do an uppercut, you can just dash through him and hit him once on the way up. If you stand slightly to the side of the peak of his jump, then you'll almost always be safe from the fireballs. His dive attack is also pretty easy to deal with. I like to dash through him as he comes down, then jump and pogo him when he dashes towards me. When he does cloak spikes, you can heal, but there is a bench next, so I wouldn't recommend it. Instead, you can dash towards him and get in a ton of hits before he teleports away. His pufferfish phase is the only slightly tricky part of this fight, and the best way to do it is to stay on one side of the arena and just jump over the fireballs. Try not to dash or move around a bunch, because if you do, you will most likely get hit. Grimm is immune to all nail hits when he does this attack, but he is vulnerable to spells, so damage tanking and spamming Abyss Shriek is a really good option. One thing to note is that he does his pufferfish at 75%, 50% and 25% HP, so you can use that to track how much damage you are doing. After Grimm there's another bench room. As usual, don't change your charms just yet, but fill up on soul. Watcher Knights is a fight that I see a lot of people struggling with, but once you get to the Pantheons you should have gear good enough to take them down pretty quickly. The first Knight is trivially easy. You just stand right in front of it and spam it with nails until it swings at you and then you dash through it. If it decides to jump over and start turning into a ball, then you can just use Shriek for a bunch of damage, and if it starts rolling, then you can Shade Soul it. The best strategy I find for these guys is to kill the individual knights before the next one has time to spawn. So once one appears, you want to deal as much damage as possible before the next one spawns in. When two of them are on the screen at once, if they're both doing the same attack, it's pretty easy to deal with. But if one of them decides to jump and the other one decides to roll, Descending Dark is your best friend. It'll help out a lot. When they're both on the same side of the arena, or they both do a roll or bounce attack, spam them with Shade Souls from far away, as it'll deal a ton of damage and get them down pretty quickly. This version of Uumuu can take a bit of getting used to, but once you get used to it, it's much better than the version in Hallownest. At the start of the fight, you can get up to the platform second from the top on the left, and you can Dream Nail Uumuu twice. This soul definitely helps out through the fight. If there's an Uumuu or jellyfish that's next to Uumuu, then you can use Shade Soul from far away to blow up the Uumuu and break Uumuu's membrane, or you can just hit it with your nail. Uumuu doesn't have a lot of health here, so it goes down pretty quickly to Shrieks and Shade Souls. The fight can be a bit tricky at first, as moving Uumuus around without getting hit by the double damage explosions can be quite annoying, but once you practice it enough in the Hall of Gods, it becomes very easy. This fight is what you get when you take the worst aspects of Nosk and then combine it with a Vengefly King. I do not like this fight. It is extremely irritating. Like, for some reason, the wing is a hitbox, so you have to have pretty good pogo reflexes in order to not get hit every time he swoops. But regardless, I'll go over some tips on how to deal with every attack. When he swoops, there are three main punishes that you can do. You can either just jump and pogo him, you can jump, pogo, and then use a Shade Soul, or you can do this thing where you jump, pogo, and then you quickly dash in the direction that it's charging, and pogo again, and then Shade Soul. This way gives you the most damage, but it's a little harder to execute, and it forces you to stay on the same side of the arena as Nosk pretty much at all times. When Nosk spawns the infected balloons, sometimes they can spawn in really awkward locations. When this happens, I think it's worth it to give up your positioning in order to get rid of them. While being next to Nosk when they swoop is definitely ideal to get the most damage, it can cause a big problem if you end up dashing directly into an infected balloon. When Nosk spits infection everywhere, the easiest way to dodge this is using Descending Dark, but the more you practice it, the better you'll get at predicting where the blobs are going to land. When it jumps up into the ceiling, you can actually heal one mask if you get lucky spawns, but if you don't, you can just immediately stop healing, so I definitely think it's worth going for it every time. Sly is a very fast fight that takes some practice. His nail has the same length as the knight with Mark of Pride and long nail equipped, so positioning is very important. Most of the time you can get in one hit before every attack, then avoid the attack by just dashing away. But it is a timing you have to practice. If you are cornered, you can climb up the wall and Sly will usually start his double slash buzzsaw combo. If you jump off the wall in time, you can completely avoid damage and get in a couple of hits. His great slash is a pain to deal with because of the size of its hitbox and the double damage. If you see him charging up this nail art, get away as fast as possible. When he does his cyclone slash, try to get on top of him and pogo him once. After this, use your double jump and dash to get out of the way. When he transitions into his second phase, you can heal a maximum of 2 masks. Don't go for the third because he'll interrupt it with his scream. When he dashes towards you in this phase, just dash away, then walk back in to hit him. If you have a lot of health, you can go for a Shade Soul, but if you are low, I would recommend saving the soul for heals. There really isn't a lot to say for this fight. You pretty much just do everything you do in the first Hornet fight, only a lot faster. The main tips I can give are to make sure to get rid of the spikes as soon as possible. Using Shade Soul is a great way to do this, as you can also get in some damage on Hornet. There's this weird glitch that happens when she gets just stuck on the right side of the arena and she can't move out unless she does one of her jump attacks. So make sure to capitalize on this opportunity as much as possible by spamming her with your nail. This fight goes pretty quickly because she doesn't have a lot of health, so the best way to do it is to just spam her to death and then heal up at the bench. This is where I'm going to leave off the second episode. If this helped you at all, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and go check out the other parts in this series.